Since my arrest in April of 2016, I've been doing a lot of reading into the nature of law, authority, and social principles, primarily around free speech. The videos I make aren't exactly educational because my main purpose is comedy and mostly making fun of stuff, but now and again I like to make videos like this to give people a little bit of an insight into the things that I've realised or my perceptions towards certain aspects of society that I want to share with people. Sargon has always told me, if you want to get anywhere in this game, read, read, read. And even though I'm not an educator or a debater, I'm a comedian, I did it anyway, because it's always good to learn. And I'm beyond happy that I did, because when it came to me facing off against the prosecutor, I have never been more thankful for reading books in my entire life. If you want to know how my battle with the prosecutor went, picture the Sargon versus Thomas Smith debate. Now put Thomas in a suit and make him 10 times angrier. And that's a pretty accurate description. GG fam. However, as we all know at this point, I won a battle in a war where the outcome was already decided before the war even started. But on to the point that I want to talk about. I've been reading Social Principles in the Democratic State, authored by political philosophers Richard Stanley Peters and Stanley Isaac Ben. The description of the book, published in 1959, is that it makes explicit the social principles which underlie the procedures and political practice of the modern democratic state. The authors take the view that, in the modern welfare state, there are problems connected with the nature of law, with concepts like rights, justice, equality, property, punishment, responsibility, and liberty, which modern philosophical techniques can illuminate. I've been reading it keenly and gathering a greater insight into natural law, moral law, the definition of a society, its structure, its adoption, and also its rejection of law and authority. But my main area of interest is pretty much everything in the book to do with speech, and the book outlines that law and authority interfering with speech in any way causes a lot more damage than you may think. Bear in mind, like I've said before when I make videos like this, I'm not an intellectual, so my interpretations of this should be taken with a grain of salt. So, Dr. Layman, please just DM me any corrections. Most people think restrictions of free speech are to prevent an unwanted form of politics from growing or to prevent criticism of those in charge, as that could lead to revolution and it also could prevent racism. But restrictions on speech can actually have a much deeper and catastrophic effect on society as a whole, and these issues are the most dangerous as they're the ones that aren't very obvious and therefore not given any consideration. But due to the dangers these restrictions pose, I feel they should be brought to people's attention. Speech plays an enormous factor in moulding what your personal interpretation of a society is. I don't mean the literal definition of society, I mean an individual's own interpretation. The way you view certain groups, the music you like, the political party you support, and so many factors about yourself will have been influenced or possibly outright defined as a whole by information that you received from other people. Think about all the things that you like, all the things that you enjoy, the food you like, your politics, your favourite book, your hobbies. You are aware of these things because you were given information that they exist. You didn't just go on Google and start typing in random gibberish until something coherent popped up. You were given information about these things. It might have been from your parents, friends, you just stumbled across it on the internet by luck, or whatever other reason. But at some point in your life, you were given information that this thing exists. You gained an interest in it and grew to love it, and the only reason that happened is because you were made aware of its existence. Now, picture a restriction of speech on, let's choose something mundane, Shakespeare. Let's say that you aren't allowed to talk about Shakespeare. His plays, his works, all of it is banned. It's all haram. The effect of this is that not only would the world be robbed of some truly great works, and also the new words created and added to the English language through his works, but most importantly, its influence on modern media, theatre and cinema would be lost. Even if all literature and information about Shakespeare had been erased, we can still have this information given to us by people who lived during a time when this information was permitted, most likely your grandparents. Despite no physical manifestation of this information existing, they could still tell us all about the information, very much like in the book 1984, when Winston spoke to the very old man in vain of hoping to gain an insight into what society was like before totalitarian rule. This applies to any society. When a school of thought or idea is forbidden, we can always turn to people who existed during a time when it wasn't to pass that information down to us. idea heirlooms. When an idea is created, throughout time it branches off and its influence can spread into many different areas which ultimately can shape the future of society, very much like the butterfly effect, which is exactly what happened when Shakespeare's works influenced modern media, theatre and cinema. This butterfly effect applies to many things that have existed throughout history. What do you think modern politics would have been like if communism or Nazism had never existed? What do you think modern rock would look like if blues had never existed? Would rock even exist at all right now if not for the butterfly effect created by blues music? Now, we know these things existed, either because we experienced them ourselves, or our parents or grandparents passed that information down to us, or this information is spread widely in the information that we are permitted to. Meaning that if you want to erase the existence of something, it isn't enough to simply delete or burn all references to it in the world, because, as is quoted in the book, rules and standards are passed on and originated to a large extent by means of speech, which has a most important regulatory function in the life of men, and which makes possible a quite distinctive form of life. If an idea is deemed undesirable, it simply isn't enough to remove all literature and references to it. It can still be passed on as an idea heirloom, so the only way to truly destroy it is to ban all speech regarding that idea. Rules and standards work in the same way as political ideologies, history and ideas. If all information about them is deleted and erased, it can still be passed on by our predecessors through means of speech. But when they are forbidden from speaking about these ideas, completely restricting that knowledge being passed down, this shuts down the idea's butterfly effect, meaning it will have no place or influence in the future. If all information of the things I've mentioned was erased, and all speech about it was banned, then, several generations down the line, how would we know rock existed? How would we know Shakespeare existed? How would we know freedom existed? You can't aspire to or desire something that you don't even know exists or existed. The concept would be completely lost to modern man, and we have no idea whether or not it would be reinvented again. Someone's planning ahead. For this video, we're going to focus on two types of authority, de jure and de facto. We can start with de facto, which seems to be the most basic beginnings of all kinds of authority. De facto authority is authority gained with no perceived legal right. Very often this authority is granted by the people. If we look back to the most basic tribal era, the tribesman who was the most powerful warrior or had the intelligence to make good decisions that benefited the tribe as a whole would be seen as the authority of the tribe, the chief, as his power, intelligence, or a combination of both would be seen as beneficial to the tribe's survival, and as is natural to human nature, we seek to survive and gravitate towards anything that would increase our chances of that. So to appoint such a person as our leader would serve that end, and so it just made sense to do so. De facto authority quite often leads to de jure authority, which is authority granted by right. Just as we naturally seek to survive, we also naturally seek to protect our bloodline, the lives of our offspring. Being an authority has its perks, greater wealth, greater security, and protection, and therefore a greater chance of survival. So what most authorities do is, upon their death or inability to fulfil their role due to age, they pass their authority onto their offspring, exactly like kings have done throughout the ages, where their authority is passed to their sons by an established legal right, de jure, and not through the will of the people, de facto. Kings are the main example that we're going to use for de jure. De jure authority itself can also assign authority. One of the king's warriors may excel and stand out from the others, and the king would appoint him as a general. One citizen may stand out from others in his leadership and understanding of the economy, and the king would make him a lord and grant him lands in a fiefdom. When de jure is assigning authority, however, one major factor always comes into play when making this decision, and is at the forefront of the king's mind any time he wishes to grant authority. Does the person in question that the king wants to grant authority to respect and recognise the king's authority, and most important of all, if the king's authority is threatened or questioned, will this man protect it? Even though very much like today, Authority assigned would be very much based on meritocracy. Your merits are not the primary thing considered. What matters most is your opinion of the existing authority and whether or not you will uphold it. Meaning today, just like in feudal times, if you wish to excel to a point of prosperity, you not only have to excel in your merits, you also have to accept the status quo of recognising the de jure's authority. Picture the king, looking for a new general, and two soldiers stand out from the crowd. One of them is a master tactician, a highly experienced warrior and very intelligent, meaning that he would ensure minimum lives lost during battle and therefore a better overall outcome for the people. Then the second warrior, although skilled, pales in comparison to the overall quality of the first warrior. Now the first warrior resents the king and questions his authority, and the second warrior has fanatical faith in the authority of the king. The second warrior would get the job. Despite the fact that it is not the most beneficial decision for the people, it is the most beneficial decision for the king, because when it comes to de jure, their authority comes first. This means in order to have any kind of heightened power, security or prosperity, your merits are not the primary thing considered. What you think is the primary thing. So in order to achieve any of those things, you also have to think the right way. Your thoughts and opinions are not just a representation of you as an individual. They can also dictate where on the ladder you are in society. And this has been the status quo for quite some time, because the de jure have made sure that they have a monopoly on who gets authority. And you all know the principles that people are willing to sacrifice in exchange for security, power, prosperity, and to get higher up that ladder. And the king knows this too. This is a battle that has raged for thousands of years because the biggest threat to exist to de jure authority is de facto authority. De jure understands this and will do anything it can to stamp de facto out. Just like we discussed in the previous section, where de jure makes sure that only people who respect its existing authority will get authority. The de jure already have a monopoly on who gets authority. Let's have a look at this using an example of modern de facto authority given in the book, which is related to that famous example given in regards to free speech. You can't yell fire in a movie theatre. Except in this example, there really is a fire in the movie theatre. A fire breaks out, and one person notices the fire, and realises that no one else did. So he grabs a chair, stands on it, and shouts fire and points at it, making everyone aware of the problem. People start panicking, pushing each other, the room almost falls into complete pandemonium. But the man in the chair speaks in a clear, concise, and charismatic manner, giving people clear instructions of what to do. Remain calm, do not run, form a single file line towards the nearest fire exits that are not blocked by the fire. People with any sensibility would recognise this as good information and follow the commands of this person. People without sensibility would be swayed by his charismatic and confident manner and follow suit. This man would be a de facto leader. Due to his charisma, expertise and visibility given by the chair, the people would see him as an authority, and this would be further cemented when they realised that the guidance he provided actually worked in getting them all to safety. So this man didn't become an authority through any perceived legal right, de jure. This man became an authority because he was visible to the people, he was charismatic, and the information that he provided to them was helpful, useful, and benefited them. So the people then seen him as an authority. Now let's give another example with de jure authority placed alongside de facto authority. Let's say that the de jure authority started the fire with the intent of killing everyone inside. I know this sounds absolutely ridiculous and extreme, but just humour me for the time being. The de facto leader notices the fire, stands on the chair, and does what he did before, and in doing so, ruins the de jure's plans. What methods can the de jure take to prevent the de facto leader from ruining his plans? There have been methods which have been developed and refined over time, which attack each of the four main qualities of the de facto leader: existence, confidence, credibility, and visibility. Four elements that are crucial to anyone being considered a de facto leader, and the de jure have a set method for attacking each element. Some no longer practiced as they do more harm than good, and some newly refined and widely adopted today. We can start with existence. You obviously can't be a de facto leader if you don't even exist in the first place. And the very easy method that kings did in the past was simply kill the de facto leader. However, this is far too obvious and people would clearly notice and easily identify who was to blame. There is also sneakily trying to get other people to kill the de facto leader for you. For example, placing a man in a cell block full of Muslims who hate him in the hope that they kill him. But that's just as obvious, and when the public have seen you killing opposition or purposefully placing them in situations where they could be killed, this causes a lot of irreparable damage to the public perception of de jure authority. So in most instances, it's just not worth it. But we do still see this today in developing countries. Confidence is important. Who wants to follow a leader who isn't confident? If someone doesn't have confidence and charisma, then they will have an extremely difficult time gaining any kind of support from people who wish to rally behind them. Confidence is something that can be broken. If the de facto leader or their family are constantly being threatened or physically attacked by third-party groups, the de jure can simply tell the police not to act upon this and allow it to continue, in the hopes that it will reduce the de facto leader into standing down. Or the de jure can monitor the de facto leader so closely that the instant the de facto leader breaks the law, no matter how mundane the law is, the de jure can use that power to ensure a custodial conviction for the longest possible period, and nothing breaks down confidence and charisma quite like prison. And most people would abandon their goals if the possibility of going back to prison over their goals was looming over their head. This, however, does not always work, as when some people feel attacked over their ideals, this can sometimes embolden them even further to continue spreading their ideas. And most of the time, whenever you send a de facto leader to prison, you make a martyr out of them. This method itself is also dying, as the public can see right through this, just as much as they could see through attacking existence. Credibility is another thing that is crucial. Your arguments and statements must be rational, researched, and include as much factual information as it can, wherever possible, or people simply will not listen to you. But if the de jure is able to twist the public perception of you where everyone just sees you as a snake oil salesman, that in some instances can be enough to have the public turn on you. If, however, you work with nothing but facts and reasoned arguments and make it extremely difficult for the de jure to paint you as a snake oil salesman, the de jure can simply go full ad hominem and attack your character instead of your arguments, and even use the ultimate weapon of branding you a racist. To unreasonable people, which unfortunately do make up a large portion of society, this is more than enough for them to turn their backs on you, no matter how factual your statements are. However, the age of rationality is on the rise. Fake news has had one of the biggest lights shone on it by the public, and this has encouraged people to do their own research and fact-check everything that is presented to them, which is behaviour I strongly encourage, and due to this new trend, it makes ad hominem attacks and lies about a person's character a failing method in attacking a person's credibility, because people can again see right through this, and you can't argue with facts. Visibility is the final element and the newest one that the de jure have moved into attacking. If the public cannot see or hear you, your literature, or your arguments, then they will have no idea that you even exist and cannot be influenced by the information that you're putting out there. In the movie theatre example given in the book, the man stands on a chair. This chair represents visibility. This chair represents platforms. The chair allows him to be visible to the audience where they can see him and therefore pay attention to what he has to say. It doesn't matter how excelled you are with the other three elements of being a de facto leader. If the public can't even see or hear you, then your arguments will have no effect on the general population, because they never even heard them at all. But what can the de jure do about a person's visibility through platforms? Well, most platforms are privately owned companies who can ban whoever they like from their platform, because it is their platform, their rules. And that's true. A company can do whatever it likes with its platform because companies do not have any obligation whatsoever to uphold your right to free speech. Some companies have even completely abandoned it and will only platform people who agree with them. So the method that the de jure have adopted is monopolising all of the platforms with the largest access to audience to their way of thinking. And if an undesirable de facto leader tries to use any of these platforms, then the companies can simply ban them and lie by saying they broke some rule, or the company can even add rules that are clearly traps targeted at the de facto leader, or even just kick them off without any reason at all because, again, their platform, their rules, and they really owe no justification for this. This means that they can control the visibility of any de facto leader who could be a threat to them. This method isn't as obvious, and the de jure are shielded from any backlash, because, after all, it's not them doing it, it's the platforms, and their company, their rules. This new method again is something that can be fought against. Protecting freedom of speech is fast becoming the new trend, and it is long overdue. These platforms at first said that they defended free speech, but when their actions proved the complete opposite, they just completely then dropped the act and admitted that they only support free speech for people that agree with them. So in response, we can support or establish other platforms that do support free speech and can give us visibility, and we can even host our own live events paid for out of our own pocket, and we can continue to be the arbiters of our own visibility. This is something that we've already started, and it's working. We can continue to do this until the de jure reach the next stage. We don't know what that will be just yet, but just keep an eye out for it. In the meantime, if they won't let you stand in a chair, bring your own chair.